Welcome back to Specialized Space. This week, the fine fellers and fellots at O'Reilly want to help you better understand. Derek Bieri seemed to have it all. Vice Grip Garage made him millions. Over 3 million subscribers loved watching him fix cars. His family looked perfect. His Tennessee farm was paradise. But in 2023, something happened that changed everything. It wasn't a burnout. It wasn't a money problem. It was much worse. One moment in his garage nearly killed him. His 12-year-old son saw everything. What Derek experienced that day broke him in ways nobody expected. The man who could fix anything couldn't fix what happened next. He was born on May the 16th, 1984, in cold and quiet Minot, North Dakota, where winter lasted most of the year and snow buried the land for weeks at a time. His family lived in a small white farmhouse that stood alone in the middle of flat fields and endless skies. There wasn't much in the way of luxuries there. His father was a farmer who woke before dawn each day, working through snowstorms and frozen ground just to keep the equipment alive. In a place where you couldn't just run down to a store, you had to fix what you had. If something broke, you didn't toss it, you rebuilt it. Derek Bieri grew up knowing money was tight, resources few, and survival meant learning how to work with your hands. By age 3, he wasn't playing with toys, he was taking them apart. He'd sit in the barn with his dad, who was repairing tractor engines, the smell of oil and the sound of metal clinks filling the cold air. One day in 1987, he quietly dismantled his toy truck and lined up the screws like his dad did. Nobody stopped him. His father encouraged it. Soon he was repairing the family lawn mower when it wouldn't start, listening to its hiccups and using just his senses to guess what went wrong. Everything in Derek's early life pointed toward one thing: fix it yourself and fix it cheap. When he was 5, family dinners turned into lessons in reusing old parts. One summer in 1989, his father gave him a broken wagon and a challenge to fix it using scrap from 3 dead machines. He spent months figuring it out. When he was 7, he had repaired 6 farm tools using only junkyard parts and bolts others threw away. He wasn't learning these things because he wanted a hobby. He was learning them because that's how people survived where he lived. Even in kindergarten you could see it, he was different. He fixed his own bike chain at age 6 and didn't tell anyone. His grandfather, a wubby Tuet, used to tell stories about patching military vehicles under fire. Derek sat by the fire and listened closely, then stayed up late trying to apply what he'd heard to whatever old junk he could find in the yard. When he found a rusted 1972 farm truck with a seized engine, he didn't quit. He spent 14 straight nights on it, freezing fingers, working by lamplight, and he got it running. That stubbornness, that never-let-go grit, was already there. In 1991, when he was 7, he didn't ask for a toy. He built one. A go-kart made from a baby stroller frame, leftover lawnmower engine, and whatever metal he could weld together. The whole thing cost less than $10. And it worked. He rode it through the fields like it was a brand new machine. That first go-kart became 3, then 4. Each one better than the last. He didn't believe in waste. If something had parts, it had potential. At 13, digging through the back of the family shed, he found something that stopped him. His grandfather's old Ford truck, rusted, tired, and nearly forgotten. No manuals, no help, no fancy tools, just Derek. Some borrowed wrenches and time. He stripped the rust by hand, replaced the ignition wires, rebuilt the distributor, and when he changed the oil all by himself, it wasn't just a mechanical task. It was the first step in what would become his life. In 2001, he signed up for Minot High's auto shop class. Most kids in the class were only aiming to pass. Derek was rebuilding a 1972 Chevy Nova carburetor right down to the tiniest bolt. He made diagrams of the parts. He took meticulous notes. He cleaned each part by hand. The Nova won him straight A's and a best-in-class ribbon at the local fair. It even took an honorable mention at regionals. For Derek, though, the real reward had been the satisfaction of knowing he'd figured it out all by himself. The following summer, he turned 16 and wanted more to learn, but his parents could not afford new parts. Thus, he bought a beat-up 1985 Honda Civic for $200. Over 3 long months, he replaced the whole transmission with junkyard parts. He hoisted the engine himself, removed the bad system, and jerry-rigged a new one, made out of tools and scraps. A job that would have cost $800 at a shop, he did for a fraction of that. Then, the accident happened. At 17, while welding a scrap fender, he made a mistake that left his index finger fused to the metal. The pain sent him directly to the hospital. He didn't quit. Instead, he studied safety protocol as a soldier would study a map. It was a brutal lesson, but it made him better. After high school in 2002, he entered a local college program in automotive tech. He spent countless late nights in lab, taking V8 engines apart bolt by bolt. While others packed up and left, he hung back to clean parts until midnight. Professors noticed that he was not fast but exact. Each part was cataloged, cleaned, and put back into its proper place. This is where he began developing the slow, methodical process that would later become the hallmark of his car builds online. But before any of that could become a career, he joined the U.S. Army at age 18. They sent him to Fort Gordon, Georgia, where he became an information tech specialist, specializing in keeping satellite systems online so military units could talk to each other even during simulated combat. 12-hour shifts, glitches, pressure. He learned how to stay calm, how to work fast, and how to solve problems when failure was not an option. In 2004, they shipped him off to Iraq. He was 20 years old. On one patrol outside of Baghdad, his convoy's Humvee died. No power, no time, and they were out in the open. Derek crawled under the truck with a flashlight, traced the wires, found a fried relay, and bypassed it using scraps and hand tools. He got the vehicle up and running again and got them out of enemy territory. His commanding officer never forgot it. Everything felt different when he got home. Too quiet, too slow, too normal. Civilians discussed restaurant menus and weekend plans while Derek replayed moments where a socket wrench and 30 seconds meant life or death. He struggled to fit back into a world that had never seen what he'd seen, and didn't want to. Employers admired his discipline, though they didn't understand why Derek tensed at loud noises or worked like every task was a mission that couldn't fail. His skills had been forged under fire, but now he faced the toughest battle of them all. Learning to be a person again, when the war didn't end just because he left it behind. He went to school because people told him that's what he should do. But classrooms didn't feel like progress, they felt like confinement. Professors lectured about conflict theory and international relations, and Derek sat in the back thinking, "You've never smelled burning metal or watched friends get carried away." He wasn't angry, just disconnected. He did well academically, but he kept his head down, talked little, and left campus the second class ended. At night, he took apart old engines in his garage, not for the money, but because the predictable rhythm of machines made more sense to him than the unpredictable mess of people. Therapy was offered, but Derek avoided it. He didn't want to explain himself to someone who had learned trauma from textbooks. He wasn't ashamed, just without words for it. He built routines instead. Early mornings, long runs, meticulous organization of every tool and object in his workspace. Structure felt safe. Structure kept the chaos at bay. But even with order, small things chipped at him: crowded rooms, sudden noises, the heavy silence before sleep. Sometimes, when everyone else was settled into their lives, Derek would wonder if he'd already lived the most meaningful part of his own at 20 years old. He eventually found work at a small machine shop, repairing diesel engines and industrial equipment. The shop owner, an old mechanic with a busted knee and a soft voice, didn't ask questions. He just handed Derek broken things and trusted him to make them whole again. And Derek did. Every time. Customers admired his precision. Coworkers admired his patience. But Derek didn't see himself as talented, just trained. He approached every repair with the same urgency as that Humvee on the highway, not because he needed to, but because he didn't know how to flip the switch off. Around that time, he reconnected with a few old friends, but conversations quickly faded into nostalgia and awkward silence. They had moved on: careers, relationships, plans. Derek respected it, even envied it, but he couldn't relate. His timeline felt broken, like someone cut a thread in the middle of his life. He was 22, but his memories aged him by decades. So he drifted from most people, not out of bitterness, but because he didn't want to burden anyone with a story he couldn't tell without flinching. Yet there were moments of light. A kid he mentored at the shop loved engines the way Derek once had, curious and unafraid to make mistakes. For the first time in years, Derek felt useful not because he could fix a machine but because he could teach someone else how to think, how to solve problems, how to keep calm when things went sideways. It wasn't heroic or dramatic, just small, human progress. And though he didn't realize it then, those quiet afternoons in a grease-stained workshop were the first signs that he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was